Hi, I'm Diana.
And I'm Zach.
And we're the Farrier's Bellows, a podcast dedicated to bringing you games and tools to take your adventures further.
We're going to be talking about non-traditional indie RPGs, some that have been around for years, others that are newer, to take you beyond the ordinary.
Today, join us as we take to the wild blue in Lady Blackbird.
Our first segment is the Call to Adventure. Lady Blackbird is a game by John Harper, who is perhaps most famous or most well known for Blades in the Dark. The earliest reference I can find to Lady Blackbird is probably about 2009 or 2010. I believe that the edition that we played is the 2010 edition, although there's also a 2019 edition that looks very clean and offers a little bit more support. It is a fantasy, science fiction, space fantasy with a little bit of Western. It bills itself as steampunk, although I am resistant to that personally, and it was produced by 1-7 Design. The game is about a ship called the Owl and the titular Lady Blackbird, who is on the run. Lady Blackbird is a noblewoman in hiding, fleeing an arranged marriage to be with her one true love, the Pirate King. The problem is that there is a small star system of breathable gas between them. The crew she's hired to take her there are a bunch of no-good ruffians, one of whom is in love with her, and they've all been captured by the Imperial cruiser, the Hand of Sorrow.
Playing this game is fairly simple. You are going to select a pre-created character, and you're just going to go ahead and start rolling. Depending on your character, you're going to have different stats and different pieces of information that are going to be important, but everyone's going to test the same way. For any given test, you're going to roll a pool of dice that is created by your applicable stat and any tags that go along with it. For instance, in a fist fight, the trait Pit Fighter might come in handy, and it might have some tags like Brutal, Living Weapon, and Fast. You are aiming, when you're rolling your dice, you're aiming for die that are 4, 5, or 6 in your general pool, and they need to equal or surpass, and the number of 4, 5, and 6s need to equal or surpass the target number given to you by the GM for your roll to succeed. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's a really simple system. It will feel familiar to anyone who's played games like Blades in the Dark, or even the die pool system reminds me of like Mouse Guard, sort of like you set an objective number and then you have to like add up your stats to the things that you are using and try to hit that objective number.
Yep.
It's very basic.
Yeah, it's not too hard.
What are some things that you liked about this game, Diana?
So there is an additional pool of dice that you have in front of you that you just kind of have. Every character has their own pool of dice. And it's additional dice that you can use whenever you're feeling kind of like you need a boost for a roll. So essentially, you can take this pool, you can take all of those dice in your pool, and essentially what you're doing in gameplay is you are giving this move your all. You're putting all of your effort into this move. You are betting all of your chips on this thing. And the thing that I really like specifically about this pool system, this individual pool system, is that if you succeed, you lose all of those dice. You can earn them back later on, but you've lost those dice because you successfully put your all into it. But if you fail, you get to keep those dice. And I just think that that's so cool, because if you fail that roll, right, you get to put your all, you get to try again with more effort, with all of your effort for a later roll. It doesn't penalize you for not succeeding in that one roll. You get another chance. And I think that's really interesting. It's like a fun mechanic to play with.
Yeah. And along that same lines, right, so this is a currency, right, that you spend and you get back, this extra die pool. Anytime you make a test, you get 1 die automatically, and then you get dice for your trait and tags, whatever is applicable, and then you get to choose how much of this die pool you spend that like you're going over. And so the more dice you spend from your die pool, the more likely you are to succeed, but then the more likely you are to lose all those dice. So if I spend all 10 of the dice in my die pool, I'm definitely going to succeed at this like super heroic test, but then I am weakened until I can replenish them.
That is your one heroic move. You've done it. Congratulations. You probably won't get another one for this entire game. Yeah. That's my favorite thing about this pool system. It's like individual pool system.
I also like that it is a handy way to allow characters to do things that they are not naturally good at, right? So if I am the captain of the Owl, Cyrus Vance, and I am getting in a gunfight, I'm naturally going to be pretty good at that, and I'm going to get like tags and traits to help me bolster that role. But if I am trying to cook a meal for the crew and I have no support in that, and for some reason the GM wants to test that, I don't know, maybe food poisoning, then I can still stand a reasonable test. I can still stand a reasonable chance of succeeding by spending from the pool. So it gives everybody some versatility to do what they are interested in doing, not just what their character is set to do.
I agree. Is there anything else that you liked?
Yes, I liked the keys system. Each character, there are 5 characters that you can choose from. Each character has several what are called keys. These are elements of their character that help to guide roleplay and sort of cement the character's place in the crew. When you hit a key, you can choose to either get XP or you can add a die to your reserve pool. But you can also buy off your key to get 2 free levels, or what are in Lady Blackbird referred to as advancements. These keys give players a constant source of character guidance and XP income, but also gives them a reward for character growth, moving beyond that. And they offer an easy out if a player has a character with a key that they're just not interested in engaging with, right? So, for instance, again, Cyrus Vance, the captain of the Owl, has the key Hidden Longing, which means that they are secretly in love with Lady Blackbird, who is fleeing an arranged marriage and is on her way to meet her one true love, the Pirate King. And that key sets up this really wonderful love triangle and like drama amongst the crew that can feel really good. But if you have Cyrus Vance because you're interested in all this other stuff about Cyrus, but you don't want to engage with his hidden longing, like that's just not something that's interesting to you, you can, for free, just buy that off. I no longer have that key, and I get 2 free levels for it. So it doesn't feel like you're hurting yourself not engaging with this thing that doesn't interest you. You get a reward, even though you're sort of losing that like consistent XP and die pool income. You're getting something out of it anyway, and it gives you just this out of stuff that you might not be interested in.
Yeah, I really enjoyed playing with the keys. I played Snargle, that was my character, and there were several keys I just was not interested in tapping. Not that I didn't necessarily want them. I didn't feel like I needed to buy them off, but I was able to kind of pick and choose the ones that I wanted to focus on during this gameplay. And if I wanted to later, I could hit those other ones, but I didn't have to. The nice thing about the keys is that you don't have to hit them if you don't want to. There's a clear advantage to hitting them, but you don't have to if you don't want to. You can play this character as you would like to play this character. They are there for advantage. Those keys are there for advantage, and they're there for character growth, and they're there for some guidance because you don't get to create these characters. These characters are created for you. But you still get a little bit of individuality, and you still get to kind of decide how this character plays and feels this time when you're playing them, because you get to decide which keys you're going to focus on, which keys you're going to buy off, which keys you're going to use, which keys you're not. And I thought that added a nice level of individuality to the pre-created characters.
Yeah, they don't hurt you by not dealing with them.
Right.
They give you encouragement to deal with them. And I think that's the way you would want to handle roleplay guidance especially when you have a pre-generated character like this. Can you tell us who Snargle is? You said you played Snargle, but you didn't tell us who Snargle is.
Snargle is a goblin, and Snargle is a part of the crew that Lady Blackbird paid for, but not like a part of her immediate party.
Snargle is the pilot of the Owl.
Yes, but also those other things, like
yes.
those other things are also true.
That is true.
For Snargle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you should play the game to learn about Snargle. I don't want to give away all the spoilers.
All the Snargle secrets?
Yeah, I don't want to give away all the spoilers. You should play Snargle when you play this game.
Okay.
I guess on that sort of same line, another thing that I really liked, I thought it was specific to Snargle's character sheet, and then I looked at all the other character sheets and I was wrong. It's on all of them. But the character sheets themselves have the rules written on them so that if you are confused about how you're supposed to roll or what your key's supposed to do or what the secret is or whatever, you don't have to ask the GM. You can reference it yourself. And I wish more games did this. I like having the rules in front of me so that I can reorient myself because I am the worst at character creation and rules review. There's so much information coming in that my brain does not comprehend it and often will forget the things that are most important. Like, how do you engage in conflict and what am I supposed to be targeting? I'll forget those things. And so it's nice to have them written down for players like me who forget and aren't listening when the GM is talking because I'm thinking about the character that I'm creating or like, oh my God, this system's so different. And oh my God, I'm going to have to roleplay. I can't roleplay. I'm terrible at roleplay. This is going to be terrible. Oh my God, I have to do an accent. What is a goblin anyway? Like, if those are the thoughts going through my head, I'm not listening to, you need to hit 4, 5, and 6s and you have this, like, I'm not listening to those rules. I'm worried about the fact that I'm a goblin. So having those rules written on my character sheet is very helpful. And I wish more character sheets did that just because, you don't have to have all the rules, but just some. I think it's interesting. I think it's helpful. And I really like how this character sheet did it.
Well, I think that speaks to how well laid out and how well Lady Blackbird manages its space and its design. You can play this game, like if I handed you just the character sheets of this game, you would probably be able to play it. Because the character sheets have the meat of the rules. I'm trying to think even if the rule book really digs into, like, that's where the rules are on the character sheets. They're not really in the 16-page PDF. There's some guidance and some explanation of them, but they're all on the character sheets. And it's very well designed in that way that everything you need to know about your character takes up 1/2 of a sheet without feeling of a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper without feeling cramped. And then all of the rules of the game are on the second half. It's not a terribly simple game. It has a lot of intricately moving parts, but the way they work together is so clear that you don't need a lot of space to express it.
Yeah, I would say that this game is fairly intuitive in that way. Things work the way that I expect them to work, so I don't really need to be reading the rules all the time to figure it out. Like, I don't need my own user manual to play this game, but it's helpful to have it.
Yeah.
Like, it helps, but I don't need it. This game feels kind of intuitive. It's more intuitive than some of the other games that we've played.
Yes.
I'm thinking specifically rolling your dice and figuring that out and what you roll and why you roll it and all that stuff. That feels much more intuitive than some other games that we've played.
Yeah, for sure. Just sticking with characters for now, I really like the cast that we are given. One of the things that I think when I first heard of Lady Blackbird and I was kind of turned off by it because of the very specific cast and the very specific scenario that you were given. I think I first heard of Lady Blackbird when I was first getting into RPGs in 2012, 2013. I found this because all the designers that I was super interested in were talking about how great this game was. And so I found it and I downloaded it and I was like, oh wait, I have to play one of these characters and I have to start off in prison on this ship and I'm doing this very specific thing. That's not interesting to me. I'm new into role playing and I have this whole world ahead of me and I just want to do whatever I want. And that was very foolish of me. I'm realizing now.
I think that's not uncommon though.
I don't think so either.
Especially for new players and new GMs. You have these grand ideas and you make this super complicated dungeon, but you've never played with players before, so you don't know that your players are going to look at the shiny rock that's outside of the dungeon and play with that for 45 minutes instead of going into your dungeon. Like, you don't know that that's the thing that happens. So you have all these grand ideas. This game takes away that shiny rock, which is nice.
Yes, it strips away the distractions, and it gives you this very clear goal and the tools to get there, and also all of the things that are going to get in your way. But they're not distractions. They're things they're obstacles.
Yeah.
It feels like a television series. It feels like a well-written book, versus just sort of this, I guess, aimless kind of search, right? You are these interesting and varied characters going with this goal. And I realize that I've jumped ahead of myself again because I always do this every episode.
We have a script and you never follow it.
I know.
You don't even look at your notes when you're talking. You just start talking.
I know. I'm sorry. Okay. What else do you like, Diana?
Well, it's going to sound like I'm jumping ahead, but I really like the characters. Like, I'm a sucker for a ragtag team of outcasts running together, banding together, and causing mayhem. Like, I'm a sucker for that. I love it. If I'm not watching romance, if I'm not watching you make out, I'm watching you be destructive and taking down the man, and that's my jam. And so this game is 100% my niche. It even, like, if you wanted, could have makeouts. Like, it just works well. I don't know.
Yes, right? The fact that this game runs super well with both, like, high-packed action scenes and quiet romantic scenes and quiet family scenes and, like, high drama tension espionage scenes, like, you get all of that. We got all of that in one session.
Yeah, we did.
And it was fantastic. The characters working together is so good. I have a lot more.
Yeah, you have a lot of things that you like. You liked every aspect of this entire game.
Yeah,
apparently. I like to keep it short and sweet. You like to go on monologues. That's fine.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with that.
So you mentioned that all of the rules are on the character sheets, and they take up about half a page.
Yes, they do.
Similarly, in later parts of the book, the running the game segment is about half a page long in the 2010 edition. But I didn't feel like I necessarily needed more than that in the 2010 edition. It's about half a page long, explains how to GM the game, and it largely amounts to ask a lot of questions that are going to pit the players against one another. And it works so well. Because these characters are so tied in together, you sort of are given the pressure points to prod at to get the players running the game on their own, essentially. And it works very well. About 10 minutes before we started recording, I realized that I discovered that there's a I believe it's 2019 edition, actually.
It is 2019.
And that gives you a little bit more support, and it's all good support. I don't think it's superfluous or unnecessary. It gives you good stuff about like specific examples of questions to ask to help world build so that you can discover sort of what else is going on in your setting, in order to help prod a little bit on some pressure points. It gives you a little bit more support, and it comes out to like a page and a half now.
Oh man, that's a thick read. It's gonna take you forever.
Right? And it's all super useful. It's all great. It is a very straightforward game to run. I think lastly, I really enjoy the setting of this game. I mentioned before that it bills itself as steampunk, which I see, and I'm obviously not gonna like argue with that. I am more interested in like the aetherpunk angle, where it's like it's still Victorian and there's still a lot of bronze and stuff, but I don't see a lot of the steam coming through in this. I see a lot of like that like magical manipulation with early Edwardian Victorian aesthetics, right?
I think that's how we played it. I don't think that there was steam in the game that we played.
No, but that very much might have just been my own thing. Because the setting is generic enough that you can toy and tweak things. Like if we played this again, the scenario would probably be different enough that it would feel new. But it has this cool science fantasy high seas / outer space mashup that just works beautifully and wonderfully, and I love it. You've got these sorcerers, you've got goblins, you've got spy ships, you've got this huge evil empire. all soaring through this gaseous solar system orbiting a dim star. It just feels cool. It feels adventurous, and it feels rough and tumble, and it feels just rife with drama and action and excitement. It is so nice.
There is something different about a game that you play when everybody is loving the game that you're playing versus a game that you're playing and one or two people aren't feeling it. There's a huge difference. And I think I feel that difference the most when the GM isn't enjoying it as much, or isn't feeling the direction that the cast has gone in, or isn't happy with the way that this one thing is. You know what I mean? Like, because you're people. You are individual people with individual wants and needs as you're playing these games. And sometimes egos get in the way, or feelings get in the way. And there's just not that this has anything to do with this game specifically, but like there's something about playing a game when everybody's just really into the moment. And it's nice that you liked it, that you liked the setting, because it helped us be in the moment and really enjoy this game.
Yeah. Now I'm worried, is that a GM problem or is that a Zach GM problem?
No, I think that's a people playing together in groups of people problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're sitting down to write a story, you get to be as happy or unhappy with the story as you want. But this is gameplay is a collaborative movement. It's a collaborative artistic expression, and you don't get final say on something. If something happens and somebody else reacts to it, that reaction is valid, and that reaction is what happened regardless of what you wanted. And so you don't get complete say over this story. And so sometimes people are going to be sad or mad or angry or frustrated or oh, that's not really what I wanted. Oh well, I'll have to get over it. Like, that happens in gameplay. That's a real fact about gameplay. That's a real thing that happens. And so it's magical when those moments happen where everybody's on the same page and everybody's like, yes, I'm loving it. Let's keep going. This is great. Those moments of gameplay are incredible, and it's so fun to be a part of.
And one thing that I think Lady Blackbird does really well with that is, and we will talk about this some more when we get to approach the Innermost Cave, because why even have a structure to our podcast?
It's your fault, by the way.
There are enough different characters and enough varieties in the characters, and they all fit into these different, like, slight sort of archetypes, that the thing that interests you in a story, you're going to be able to find.
Yes.
And that's all I'll say until we get more into it.
But actually, piggybacking off that, I do have a question about the game. Well, not really the game, the characters. So Diana, love interpersonal conflict. I do not always play interpersonal conflict because I try really hard to be a nice person, and I don't want somebody to have a bad gameplay moment, so I won't be mean to you. But my favorite media to consume is interpersonal conflict media, right? Like, no one wants a love story that's happy from beginning to end. You need to have something sad in the middle happen, right? So when I was playing my character, Snargle has no reason to be a part of this group. There is no interpersonal key with anyone. There's no reason, if you're looking at this character sheet, there's no reason for Snargle to be as devoted to this team as Snargle should be to play this game. And I just don't know why. Like, why doesn't Snargle have a connection to somebody? Why doesn't Snargle, I don't know, have a debt to pay or have previously saved someone and feels some type of way about it? Like, there's no... Of all the keys that Snargle has, I think you can manipulate all of them to make Snargle have a connection with somebody else on the crew, because all of the other characters have connections.
So every other character has an explicit connection to at least one other character. Correct. And how they feel about that other person.
Correct.
Just based on the conversation that we were literally just having. Now, I had not thought of this before. I think there's a number of reasons why Snargle probably doesn't. It might be so that if you don't want to deal with that explicit problem, if that's not something that you're interested in as a player, you have an option for not having, if you don't feel comfortable having a direct one-to-one role play with someone else, then you don't necessarily have to. You know what I mean? Also, Snargle does have the key of conscience, which is you don't like to see anyone suffer.
So that's the key that I've been thinking about, but that is not a key that is specific to the group. An example from the play that we went through, we were running away, and there was a group of, I believe it was goblins.
Yeah, they were goblins.
That were in a shittier situation than me. Given that key, I should have stopped being a part of my group and started helping those goblins. There's no reason for me to keep going with that group. Of the keys that I have, there's no reason other than the history that I, Diana, am putting onto Snargle and the connections that I, Diana, am putting for Snargle. Like, other than the stuff that I, the player, am doing, if I'm going off the character sheet, there's no reason for me to stay with this group.
But
other than being the pilot. Like, I can just pilot anything, though.
I think that's taking the key to like an illogical extreme, right? I think that the intention of this key is to make you feel the like Uncle Iroh place in the group.
I don't think so.
Or the Jet Black from Cowboy Bebop. When I say his name out loud, it sounds ridiculous. Like the friendly shoulder to lean on.
I don't think that that's what that key is. That's not how I interpret that key.
Well, so that's a very interesting, like, if I played Snargle, that is kind of where I would take him.
Yeah.
Based on the same information that we're both giving, we would play this character very differently.
Very differently.
All right, I think that's fair.
It's just not how I would interpret it.
Okay. All right.
So that's my question. Why isn't there a specific connection? Boom. That's my question.
Okay.
Do you have anything that you're like, I'm not sure, why is this like this?
So I did about the 2010 edition, and then when I discovered the 2019 edition, I discovered that this was gone now, or replaced with a tool that I think is much more useful. The 2010 edition has two types of character sheets. One which explains what all of the keys and secrets and tags and traits are, but doesn't have room for like the player's name or XP earned or like to keep track of your dice pool. It doesn't have a lot of like mechanical help. It has a lot of narrative help. And then there are another set of character sheets that don't have any of the explanations for keys or secrets or anything, but does have all those kind of like things you would typically see on a character sheet. And I didn't understand why there were two. I didn't understand why one felt significantly less useful than the other one. And I was like trying to figure out what I was missing. And I guess I probably wasn't missing anything because those are the second less useful character sheets are gone from the 2019 edition. So apparently I was not the only one to wonder that. The 2019 edition character sheets are even more clean and clearly laid out than the ones from 2010, which I already thought were masterfully done. So that was my only question, and it got solved.
Please tell me about the things that stood out to you.
All right, so two things really stood out to me. The first is that the rules are very, very short and very, very free. The 2010 rulebook, I haven't counted the pages of the 2019, but I imagine they're the same about. Only 16 pages long, and most of that is character sheets. It's a very easy game to pick up and play. You can download this game and be playing it in 30 minutes. It is fantastic. It's great. The other thing that I scrambled to put in this section because I discovered it 10 minutes ago was that there's a 2019 edition, which I've mentioned, that is significantly better. Not that there's anything wrong with the 2010 edition. Like, you can get the 2010 edition, but the 2019 edition is significantly better, makes some notable improvements, but it's not on the 1.7 Design website. If you go to 1.7 Design and you go to the Lady Blackbird page and you download a copy, it's still the 2010 edition. You have to go to the ladyblackbird.org. Will have the latest editions as well as more scenarios set in the Wild Blue Yonder, which I am so excited about. I didn't know they existed, because when you Google Lady Blackbird, you get the 1.7 Design, or you get a direct link to the 2010 PDF. I'm wondering why I just now discovered there's a new edition of this, and how that one can get better propagated than the 2010 one, which still seems to be the most popular and easy to find. Mm-hmm. But the 2019 one has some world building questions that you can ask each character that are going to help you define at the table some of those sort of generic setting elements. It has more support for GMing, and it explicitly states what equipment characters have, which was so useful. That was legitimately a problem that we came up with when we were playing, was the characters. So you start off in jail, the characters got their quote unquote stuff. And then we're making our way along and they're like, do I have a gun? And I was like, yeah, you have a stat for a gun, so I don't know why you wouldn't have a gun in the stuff that they confiscated, right? So having that explicitly stated, knowing exactly what our characters are carrying at the onset of the game, I think is very useful. And that the newest edition can be found at ladyblackbird.org.
And now our next segment, Approach the Innermost Cave. Zach, what do you think is the theme or topic of this game?
I think it is ensemble casts.
I'm surprised. You did not give us a hint earlier.
This game does ensemble casts so incredibly well. And this might feel like a weird topic because probably like 98% of role-playing games are about ensemble casts. Since their inception, they've kind of been about a group of people coming together to do something. So you might be thinking, every role-playing game is about ensemble casts, and that is true, but none of them do it as well as Lady Blackbird. There is something magical about the cast of Lady Blackbird, probably because it was intentionally and carefully put together. So a lot of games, especially modern story games, do work to make sure that the party feels connected in some way. A great example of this is Apocalypse Engine games and their history stats or prompts at character creation, or Dungeon World guides like Bonds. These are small mechanized ways to, at character creation, make sure that the party doesn't feel disconnected. Make it so that it's not you all meet in a tavern for this job. A lot of games want to make sure that there is some sort of relationship between the characters so that they are an ensemble cast, right? These tend to work really well as a jumping off point, but they tend to get forgotten over the course of play. One of the times that I think those mechanics have worked best was in our game of Hearts of Wulin, where the entanglements actually create a significant influence on the course of the game, not just at character creation, right? You have this big, huge entanglement.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the key. The more vital the entanglements are to the character and their quest, really, the more valid and interesting they are going to be in gameplay, right? It's one thing to say, oh, I saved you once in a battle, and then we can kind of come up with some flavor for that and figure it out. But is that going to come up? Is anyone going to care? The number of times that I've played with a thief in Dungeon World who took the bond, I've stolen something from you, and then at character creation we come up with this really cool thing like, oh, I had this family heirloom and you stole it from me, but I don't know, and then we immediately drop it and it never comes up again.
Yeah,
is constant because there's not a reason
to bring it up.
Yeah.
In gameplay.
Lady Blackbird works to make sure that these connections are interesting, to make sure that they are important, to make sure that they are things that are going to come up and engage you throughout the actual quest. Probably the best is Cyrus's love for Lady Blackbird, right? That is an interesting engagement considering the circumstances. But you also have Kale's key of fraternity, in which Kale is sworn to Captain Vance in a bond of brotherhood, as well as Naomi, who is Lady Blackbird's bodyguard, who has key of the Guardian. You are Lady Blackbird's loyal defender. Turn this key when you make a decision influenced by her or when you protect her from harm. Which, in connection with, Cyrus pursuing her, might create some interesting tension, like Cyrus is actively trying to derail her from her quest, from Lady Blackbird's quest to return to her one true love. So how is that going to interact with Naomi? How are all these things going to play off one another? It creates this really interesting and lively ecosystem of relationships that create this drama at the table. I think it also helps that Lady Blackbird doesn't ask you to figure out how to make the connections on your own. It gives you many explicit and significant connections that are going to guide your roleplay and your game. when players are asked to come up with stuff on their own, it can be superficial, especially like things like character creation, right? And you don't know what to expect. It can be a little light and easy to forget, right? Because you don't know who your characters are yet. And so it's kind of easy to throw something out there and discover that it's not going to stick. It's not something that you're going to be interested in engaging with long term. And that's when it gets dropped and it doesn't kind of bind the characters together.
Right.
But Lady Blackbird John Harper has obviously taken care in Lady Blackbird to make an interesting cast of characters. And also, by providing you with a fairly large, interconnected cast with various goals, ambitions, and jobs, we get this perfect storm of character drama. I've said this previously, but it feels like a TV show, right? Yeah. All of the characters and their relationships feel important, not just to the characters, but to the narrative. Their interactions are important. They are going to affect the narrative in a way that a lot of games don't, right? The character bonds are things that are going on in the background of the story, and in this, the journey is kind of on the background of the character relationships, which is kind of what you see in all of the best ensemble movies and films and like comics and TV shows. People didn't watch Firefly because they were super interested in
space westerns.
Yeah, like I liked the setting of space westerns. That's not why I kept watching That's not why I binged Firefly when I first discovered it. I binged Firefly because I loved the characters and I loved their interactions with one another. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that makes me want to come back to Lady Blackbird so bad, is because I want to see, like, I literally want to be like, oh, is Cyrus gonna finally express his love for Lady Blackbird? Like, oh man, what are they gonna do when they get to the Pirate King? Does Lady Blackbird return his feelings? Is she secretly trying to like hide that she might have feelings for Cyrus as well? Like, that's the thing that makes me want to come back to this game so much, is to see all those relationships play out. It's this interconnected, tightly woven story. And one of the things that I think is so great about it is that because there's all this character drama, the GM can kind of sit back and ask questions, and then everything just kind of unfolds naturally. It works so well because the drama is at the forefront and the adventure is very close just behind.
Like all of the best ensemble movies and shows and entertaining media that Diana consumes.
Yes.
I consume a lot of that sort of stuff.
I mean, would you agree with this, that you think that...
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. 100%. I don't want to jump ahead, but I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. This game is a very good game for new players and new GMs, because it takes away those distractions, because it does a thing that we know well. It does ensemble casts, and it does it well. And it allows you to focus on those interpersonal relationships without being heavy-handed or without being intimidating. It's not intimidating in this game. It feels easy. It feels natural to focus on those interpersonal relationships because that action is right there. If you are scared or nervous, you can go ahead and jump towards that action because that interpersonal conflict is going to manifest itself in that action. It's going to. You need to tap into those keys to get those dice back, and your tapping into a key is going to make somebody else tap into their key, and their key is going to affect you, and you're going to affect them, and around this table of 5 characters and a GM. Like, I think this game does what it does very, very well, and I think that this game is a magnificent game to use to introduce to new players and to new GMs. If you're nervous about jumping into GMing, this is, I think, a great game to go ahead and do that. If you have a person who's like, oh, I really want to role play, but I don't really know how, and I'm kind of scared, and Dungeons and Dragons terrifies me, like, great, fine, let that terrify you. There are so many other games out there, and this is a great one to get your feet wet with. And this game does that just so well. It is fun, it is interesting, and it's not so unique or so different that it's hard to wrap your head around. If you have no concept of role-playing games, you've seen The Avengers, you can play this game.
Or Star Wars.
Or yeah, right? I mean, we'll go into that, but there are so many examples.
Yeah.
So many examples.
And I think one of the reasons that it is so new player friendly is because it takes a lot of the stuff that we traditionally associate with role-playing games out of the player's hands, right? It takes the scenario out of players' hands. It takes the introduction out of players' hands. It takes the end goal out of players' hands. It takes the characters out of player hands. And what you're left with then is the interactions between the characters and the role play, right? And because you aren't distracted, you're not using up that REM space for all the other things that you typically need to think about when you're doing an RPG. You are just focusing in on the characters themselves and how they interact and what their relationships are going to be like and how you're going to achieve your specific goals. It works really well. One thing I would say to a new GM is, contrary to just about any other game I can think of, this game is going to be easiest to run the more players that you have. Because it has a set cast of characters and a set crew, it is very hard to take characters out of the story. You're going to miss stuff if you take characters out. And if you are playing NPCs, then that is taking up a lot of that REM space to try to just kind of like throw wrenches in the gears. So if you have a full cast of 5 players plus a GM, you have basically, as a GM, all you really need to do is sit back and like prod and poke and cause trouble. If you don't have a full cast, if you don't have 5 players, then you need to take up NPCs, and that just doesn't feel as good as having individual players take on those characters and fight for those goals. Like if I was NPCing Naomi, being very like protective of Lady Blackbird, which I think is what I did, right? I took Naomi and
Lady Blackbird, because
I was both Naomi and Lady Blackbird.
Yeah, we unexpectedly had a smaller cast of crew than we expected,
which was okay. I just would have loved to see what a player would have done with those characters.
I'm now wondering if the Snargle character doesn't have a connection because it's the character that you can...
It would be the easiest NPC.
It would be the easiest NPC. It would be the easiest to kind of put to the side.
Yeah.
They're the pilot. They're a goblin pilot. Like, you put them off to the side if you have to. Right? Like, if you only have 4 players who can join. I wonder if that's why.
It might have been smarter if I had done that. But, so, one thing that I think is really interesting about this game and just kind of, like, how it still works even if you start breaking the stuff that it's set up. Because we had 4 players, and because we filled the crew of the Owl, and the only NPCs left were Naomi and Lady Blackbird.
We had 3 players.
You're right, because there's 5.
Yeah.
Y'all filled the crew of the Owl. Naomi and Lady Blackbird were left. Y'all could have dropped them at the nearest planet and been like, y'all are too much trouble, and then just gone off and done your own adventures. There wouldn't have been a problem.
Yeah.
At all. The game would have ran just fine, and it would, I feel like, probably feel a little bit more like a traditional role-playing game.
Yeah.
But there's still enough, like, character interactions and all that stuff. There's no reason why you couldn't just play a totally original game with just the crew of the Owl or with original characters, really. The game does support making your own, but it is difficult, and I expect it would not pay off as well as the core group unless you put a lot of time and energy into making sure that they have the same sort of payoff as they do in the core game. Diana, should we return with the elixir?
I think we should.
So, Diana, what's some other media? We've touched on it a little bit, but what is some other media that you think would inspire or explore these sort of same ideas?
So while we were playing the game, one of our players strongly suggested Black Sails. You and I have not consumed this media. We have not watched it, but it was strongly suggested. So I am suggesting it on their behalf, not from personal experience, though it is about pirates. So there's that.
I think we talked about this, or we definitely talked about Black Sails in the Poisoned episode as well.
I think so, yeah.
And we still haven't gotten around to watching it, which is
we'll do it
problem.
We'll do it at some point. I've been consuming a lot of Korean media right now, so I don't have time for Netflix pirates. I don't have time. Gotta watch my Korean stuff. That's not the point. The point is, Serenity, we talked about Firefly, the show, Serenity, the movie. If you don't feel like watching 9 episodes of good TV, you can watch the movie and kind of get the same sort of idea, I think. What about you? What's the media that you thought of?
Well, I would like to mention a few of the people that John Harper cites as influences, because I think they give a perfect example of sort of the tone and ideas that you get from this game. Luke Crane, who designed Mouse Guard and Burning Wheel. Joss Whedon of Buffy and Firefly, two of, I think...
That makes sense.
Some of the best regarded ensemble casts, especially of our generation.
Yeah.
George Lucas,
Yep.
Star Wars, which this has explicit feels of.
Mm-hmm.
And Hayao Miyazaki of Studio Ghibli, which I also very much see, especially in terms of the sort of the romance and the drama and the character relationships. I actually put as one of mine Howl's Moving Castle, which I think does a good job of sort of specifically the Miyazaki version of Howl's Moving Castle, the film.
There are multiple versions?
It's based on a book that is very different than the anime.
Oh, okay.
But the anime sort of has this romance, drama, action, all these like sort of plots coming together and these characters working together to achieve their own individual goals. And I think it fits very well, especially if you're going for more like a pastel fantasy feel. But explicitly Star Wars, like the owl is the Millennium Falcon, 100%. The Imperium of the Wild Blue Yonder is the Empire, as well as Firefly. Anything that is about plucky smugglers putting it to the forces in power is going to be a perfect sort of set piece for this game.
I have two other ones that I think this game reminds me of, but they don't necessarily hit on those two, on those that kind of definition that you were going for.
You don't think so?
Well, so Dark Matter, I've talked about it before. It's on Netflix. I have no idea if it's good or not. I like it. That does not mean that it's good. It just means that I like it.
You don't have to couch what you like.
I don't want anybody coming at me being like, it was a terrible show. Like, I don't claim to have taste, but I like Dark Matter. And what it is it's criminals in space doing criminals in space stuff. So yeah. that one fits. The setting is much more futuristic, but that doesn't mean anything. That one's a good fit. But my last one is The Princess Bride. And
I think that also still fits.
There's not like smuggling going on. I mean, I guess you could say that
the Dread Pirate Roberts.
Yeah, but that's the Dread Pirate Roberts is like not a deal in this movie. In The Princess Bride, the Dread Pirate Roberts isn't the main character of that movie. Wesley is. Like, you don't see him doing piratey stuff. You see him like running off with the girl and then trying to get the girl back. Like, it's different. But I think The Princess Bride does an ensemble cast that is connected to each other in these really intricate and specific ways. I think it does it very, very well. And it does it in a meaningful way and a way that feels natural.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I totally see that. What kind of story would you like to tell with this game?
More inner party conflict. We play with nice people, and I am part of that problem. We play with nice people, and we're always really nice to each other, and we're always like, oh, okay, you want to be captain? Go ahead. It's fine. Like, but there's not a lot of inner party conflict, and I would like to play with more inner party conflict because I think that is where this game will really, really shine. It does very well with people who like to play with each other and like to be nice with each other. It does a great job. It was a great game, but I think that this game would really shine in inner party conflict.
Yeah, and I think you would get more of that inner party conflict, especially if you had if you have the full 5 players. But the game supports that inner party conflict, like you were talking at the start of the episode with Snargle. You could have hit that key by being like, no, we can't leave. We have to help these people. But for the sake of like moving the game along, you didn't, right? But that would have boosted that inner party conflict, right?
Yeah. What kind of story would you like to tell?
Aside from desperately wanting to play a full campaign of this with a full crew, I would like to play this system with a different crew or with custom characters. Like I said, there is a little bit of support for this in the book, but these characters are so well crafted and connected that it really would take some time to capture that magic with well-written traits, tags, keys, and secrets. I have discovered, now that I've discovered ladyblackbird.org, that there are 2 more games actually in this setting with this system called Magister Lore and Lord Skurlock. I have not played them. I haven't even read them. And I'm probably going to do that as soon as we wrap recording. I'm going to read through Magister Lore and Lord Skurlock because I need more of this setting. I need more of this system. I need more of all of this desperately. The Farrier's Bellows is a production of The Gauntlet. You can find us on Twitter at GauntletRPG. You can find us on our website at gauntlet-rpg.com, and we are on Patreon at patreon.com/gauntlet, where you can contribute to The Gauntlet and support more great shows like ours. Also, make sure to check out the forums at forums.gauntlet-rpg.com, where we post a discussion thread on our episode.
Thanks to our editor, Zach B., for making this sound reasonable. Also, you can find us on iTunes. Please rate and subscribe to us there. We would really, really appreciate it.
You can follow us on Twitter at Farrier's Bellows. Talk to us and talk about us. We would love to hear your thoughts on the show and on Lady Blackbird. You can find me on Twitter at ZWGarth.
And me at ICDiana. Until next time, you cannot dream yourself into a character. You must hammer and forge yourself one.
Remember to watch out for Sky Squid.